Mr. Joshua Taylor, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Nice to be here, David.
Yep. And so if you were to describe, your value to the audience, we'll say young entrepreneurs who are looking to get into the game, into the business world, what would you say your value is, maybe in a 30-second or a minute segment on all the stuff you've done? I'm sure we'll get into everything in more detail, but just a high level overview of a lot of the stuff you've done already.
Well, formally, I have the honor of leading the Spears Institute at SMU. And so, in that capacity, I'm an educator, and I'm here to bring resources, connections, money to students on campus and alumni. I feel I feel I have a few things to offer, but that's up for students to decide. Um, Before that, I've had many different careers, and that helps me bring a different perspective to campus. I'm not a career academic. I had a business career. I've led startups. I've been a management consultant, and I've been a corporate executive as well. And I've traveled around the world and seen a lot of different things, and so I hope that I can bring all of that to students on campus.
Yeah. And I like how you've touched on the fact that you've had multiple different careers, even within your own career. And so, what are some of the biggest differences, I guess, like from being a management consultant or leading startups that you've seen that I guess people would be surprised to learn by or that you just can remember off the top of your head?
The biggest difference between those two careers is, when you're a consultant, it's great. It's really fast paced. I wouldn't give that experience back for anything. But you don't really have to deal with any of the consequences of your decisions when you leave.
Hmm.
You get this opportunity to fly in and you identify problems and find solutions very quickly, and then you deliver a presentation, and then you pat yourself on the back and leave. And that's, you know,
Yeah.
it's quite different to the experience, as you know, David, of running your own business, right? Because if your sales are dropping as an entrepreneur, and you look around, you look to the left and you look to the right, and then you have to look at yourself and say, well, no, that's my problem. I have to go solve that.
Hmm.
You don't have the luxury to pack up your bag and go somewhere else. And so, I started my career as a consultant, and I got to learn a lot very quickly. And those frameworks are incredibly useful. Um, but it also, for me, it wasn't close enough to the real world to be satisfying for me long term. I got what I wanted out of it, which was a wonderful toolkit, but I like to get my hands dirty, and it just wasn't close enough to the fire and the action for me.
Yeah. And what would you say to someone who's, we'll say my age, so going into their senior year of
Yeah.
college and they're trying to decide, they know they want to be an entrepreneur, maybe they have started a business, haven't, and they want to really get experience. What would you say are some good piece of advice that they should be doing? Maybe careers they should look at after college. Can an entrepreneur be made any sort of career path? Are there certain key areas you think they should go into? Kind of what is your general advice or rules of thumb for young entrepreneurs looking to get into starting a business or, building their career in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, specifically for entrepreneurs, I think there's no better time to take a risk and do something than when you're in college and when you first graduated. You have, all the upside in the world, the time to try something and fail, the time to experiment. You have the energy to get into it. You have very little for the most part in terms of other responsibilities. And so if you're that way inclined and it's exciting to you, I'd just say go for it, right? You're gonna have folks that want to help you. You're gonna have folks that think you're crazy, and that's part of the package. Um, the other thing that I would say for folks that are starting out is, I think sometimes entrepreneurs can fall into this trap of feeling like they're a lone wolf or they're out there on their own, and that's really not true. And there's an amazing community around SMU, of folks that have graduated, folks on campus. And I would just encourage you to go out and find those people, right? And you have to get used to rejection as an entrepreneur. So you may reach out to a few folks and not hear anything, but from the folks that you do hear something from, they're going to make the world of difference, right? Because you need you need a tribe. You need a group of folks that you can go ask questions, that you know are going to back you, that you can ask for advice, that can tell you that you're being silly if you're pursuing the wrong idea. And that network is what helps you long term, right? It's what keeps you in the game in the down moments, of which there's going to be many. So I would just, I would just encourage everyone to have a go, right? Don't be afraid. Just jump in, and when you do that, put the time and effort into finding your people, because they're out there and they'll make the difference between, staying for the long run, making the marathon, so to speak, versus dropping out.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I like the idea of the lone wolf, where I feel like I could definitely speak for my friends, a lot of the entrepreneurs that I know. I feel like they have to just they think at least that they have to put their head down and just do work for 10 years and then pop up and then they're, $1 million company. And I think that it's really not the narrative that like you've painted out and a lot of other really successful people I've spoken to have painted out, where there is a community out there for you to find. And not only is it out there, but you actually should go out there and take advantage of it because it will accelerate your growth. And your network is super important. So why do you think there is a narrative among entrepreneurs, or at least a trend, that they have to go at this alone? There isn't a network out there. And I guess what are some of the things that you think people can do to combat that and actually go out there and build a network for themselves and build a community of entrepreneurs?
I think the mindset piece of it, especially when you're just starting out, is because it can be very isolating, right? It's a very lonely endeavor to be an entrepreneur. I mean, you come to campus and folks are coming here to get investment banking jobs or consulting jobs, right? And then you sort of feel like you're the odd one out as an entrepreneur, and so that it sort of creates this mindset that you do need to go it alone, like you're the lone soldier marching in the winter, right?
Yeah.
But what I'll tell you, if you pull yourself out of that, the evidence is there, both from hard data and from soft data, that the best ventures and the best entrepreneurs construct complementary teams around themselves. And that's necessary, along a number of dimensions, right? Very practically, if you're going to go pitch a VC or an angel for money, they're going to ask you, who is your team, right? And you need that, because none of us have all of the answers to every question, right? Like, I mean, gosh, I'm a pretty decent strategy guy. I'm a pretty good analyst. But I'm not a great supply chain guy. Like if you ask me to solve a supply chain problem, I'm sorry. So you know what? I go find someone with that skill set to complement me. And there's just so many complicated problems that no one person, once your business gets big enough, can solve them all. And then the other thing, there's a psychological element, right? It's one thing to be doing things on your own, and you can do that for a while, but you're gonna hit a setback at some point. And having that social commitment and someone to pick you up that's on the team, that's in it together, is incredibly important, right? And so, you know, there's an old adage that if you want to go a long way, then and take a team, right?
Mhm.
It's very true, right? And um, if you look at the vast majority of unicorns or companies that have been successful, they had two, three founders. Very, very few companies that have made it had a sole founder position, at least not once they got to the point where they started taking money.
Yeah. I definitely feel that for myself where I've worked with a lot of contracts from my company just by myself being the sole founder. And I'm actually working right now on more of like a joint venture operation with another company who could help out with the marketing and stuff like that for this one potential client. And even just having another team to work with, I feel myself way more motivated to actually follow through, do good results, and like I have that like community aspect. And so I definitely I understand that. And then in my past company, I also had two other co-founders. And so just like that motivation of being together and having those complementary skill sets. I think maybe something about being human, I don't know, but it's just it's motivating. And it's also when you were telling me this, I actually thought of Y Combinator, how I know that one of their, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of their investing criteria is that, you have a couple co-founders to go along with you just because it's so hard to do all, as you said, like all the problems alone. So I definitely think it's important to emphasize that for early entrepreneurs. And I also like the idea of, when you're in college, just to go back to that other point, that you should be taking the risk because you're a student and, you don't have a family depending on you, for the most part. And so, why do you think, maybe just go deeper on that, college is the best time to start a business, and how should these people go about that if they want to?
Well, you have you know, the advantage of several decades of time ahead of you, right? If you think about you're going to graduate, you'll be 22, 23, and you've got, 40 years of working life, give or
Mhm.
take. And so your opportunity to build cumulative experience starting out at that age, right? Even if you have one or two failures, by the time you hit 30, you've got a ton of experience, right? And you have to go into it expecting that it's probably going to fail. But then the next one you do is lower risk. The next one you do is lower risk, right? There's no other time that gives you so much ability to have a benefit of compounding experience than when you're just out of college. I guess maybe if you started when you were out of high school, but that might be, someone might disagree with me, but college helps, right? Because you build a network and you get to know people and get a little bit more experience. But if you wait until you're 30 or 35, or 40, right? You can still do it. You've got a lot of experience, but you've halved the amount of learning time. And so that's it. Time is the biggest friend and the biggest enemy in any endeavor that you could pursue. It's the scarcest resource for all of us. And so, if you are that way inclined, spending 2 years out of college and getting that experience, um, uh, you know, if it doesn't work, great, go back to grad school.
Yeah.
You know,
Ex-
go. You'll be more hireable than anybody else, right? It shuts no doors, but it gives you a foundation to build on, which compounds over time, which is a bigger advantage than the vast majority of other folks that jump into it.
Yeah. I wanted to go deeper on that one thing you mentioned about having, a student might go, or we'll say an entrepreneur has multiple businesses over their career.
Mhm.
And I could tell you from personal experience, I'll speak for myself, that when you're first starting your own business, you think that you have to lock yourself in a room and come up with like the perfect Google or, Microsoft or the billion-dollar idea. And
Yeah.
that's the business, And so what would you say to a student or someone young who's looking to get into starting a business, who thinks that they have to come up with the perfect idea, and they can't start until they come up with that idea and actually pursue that?
There's zero chance that you're going to come up with the best idea first time around. I mean, it's like doesn't happen,
Hmm.
right? And so they used to say fail fast and fail often. They don't say that as much anymore. It's about, I think it's evolved into this phrase, product market fit.
Hmm.
But the reality is, whatever you have in your head as an idea, as a product, the faster you can get that to something that you can go out and talk to a customer, see if they're interested in it, and then take their feedback and iterate, the better, right? If you're just wasting time otherwise. And there's all of the theory that you've heard of, minimum viable product, and but I mean, let's be clear. It's right. Like, you don't have a business unless you have something which people want to buy. And the vast majority of people out there in the world, whether they're consumer or enterprise, don't care about what you have to offer them. So, you need to figure that out. And the best way to figure it out is to get rapid, constant feedback to iterate to something which does click with the consumer or the customer that they're going to want to buy. So, the theory would say you do 4 to 6 week sprint, come up with something, put it out there. Ideally, not just your family and friends, but folks that are going to give you real critical feedback. You hear that, take it on board, you iterate, and then you rinse and repeat until you have something that's going to work. Some people get there faster than others. Like, interesting. I saw on LinkedIn an infographic the other day where it was talking about famous companies and the time to product market fit, and it was everything from like 3 months to 10 years,
Mhm.
right? Is that predictable? Absolutely not.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll figure it out. But the key is they didn't sit in a room for 3 months or 10 years to come up with that. They had an idea, they built it, they iterated it. Maybe they discovered that someone else was doing it. Maybe they got a great piece of feedback, and they changed it constantly until they got something that worked.
Yeah, I there's so many things to touch on just that segment.
Mhm.
And I guess the question that I got from all of this was, what do you think of, like I said, business plans, I guess, of like, I'm
Yeah.
going to spend a lot of time on the research and not really go out there and test a lot of things. I'm just going to write the perfect plan and just stick with that. Like I heard in an interview that Elon Musk, for example, he doesn't really write a lot of business plans because as soon as he thinks he actually has the right, we'll say, analysis or the summary or whatnot, the business changes because you're always,
Yeah.
as you said, like rapidly iterating. So what would you say to someone who's maybe looking to write a business plan? How much time should they spend with it? So what are some key thoughts on that?
Yeah, it depends on the stage of the business, in all honesty. And you're talking to a guy that in my early career I wrote hundreds of business plans. But
Yeah.
it's different when you're working for a large company with a degree of predictability in its revenue streams than when you're working for, or you're an entrepreneur creating something that hasn't existed in the world. I
Mhm.
will tell you, for the most part, um, at the very early stage, and I'm talking, you're you're someone with an idea, a pitch deck, and a lot of ambition and a lot of passion. A business plan is close to useless.
Mhm.
You would be far better off putting all of the hours that you spend in Excel into building a product and talking to customers. Just think about the value of your time, right? Um, Once you get something and you start to have revenue and you've got sales, maybe you're not profitable yet, but you've built out a team, you get to Series A, Series B, then there is some value to putting something down, but the value isn't the numbers. The value is the thought process in demonstrating to yourself and demonstrating to others that you understand how the business works, the drivers, because no matter what you put on the page, it's going to be wrong, right?
Mhm.
But your ability to say, well, if this changes, what happens? That's a useful thought process because it builds the intuition for the way your business is going to work. But at the very early stage when you have nothing, you don't you wouldn't spend the time on that. In my view, there are
Mhm.
others that would disagree. Um, I was reading a very famous VC book called Venture Deals recently, and there's a whole chapter in there on business plans.
Mhm.
And It's written by Brad Feld, if your listeners are interested. And the line is that he hasn't, as a VC, he's a very famous VC. He's like, I haven't read a business plan for 25 years. And if someone sends me a business plan, then I pass on the deal because his view is just that they're focused on the wrong things.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely an extreme point, but I could definitely see that. And even for my current business, I spent so much time, again, I didn't write a specific business plan, but spending a lot of time in that strategy phase where I was always trying to think, what do my customers want? What do the clients want? All these different things. But I actually learned 10 times more than I could in 3 months of planning by actually going out there, talking to potential clients and actually literally asking them what they want, iterating off that process. And so I could definitely completely agree with that. Another thing I wanted to go back to was you mentioned how, starting a business, it shuts no doors. When you want to maybe, let's just say you decide after 2 years after you graduate that you want to go back maybe to grad school or to a company. As someone who's been really heavily involved in that corporate world, what would you say to someone who's maybe scared to start a business because what if it fails? Am I not going to be able to get hired from a company going back to a more corporate setting? So what would you say about that transition, maybe that worry?
At at the sort of recently graduated from, an undergraduate degree in your early 20s, the risk is very, very low that that's going to count against you if you've tried a business and failed. From a corporate perspective, um, most of the entry point most of the entry point sort of roles in a big Fortune 500 are going to come from MBA programs. And so, worst case scenario is you try something, you fail, and then you have a really good story to tell for your business school essay, right?
Mhm.
And then that's awesome, right? Because you get into a school and then you get into the programs from your MBA. But the upside, right? The chances that it works out and becomes something more, right? That's like 10x, 100x, right? And if your fallback is, hey, I'm just going to go to business school and then get a job in the normal routes after that, then it's not a bad fallback option, right?
Mhm.
Um, I I've recruited a lot of folks, in my prior careers as a consultant, probably hired more than 100 folks and done, gosh, I can't even remember how many interviews I did in consulting. And then there's an executive. And um, I would tell you, you screen hundreds of resumes in those roles, and it gets really boring.
Yeah.
It gets really boring to see, oh wow, this person worked in New York at pick your investment bank, and you're like, okay. But someone who comes along and it's like, oh wow, they they did a startup and it's clear it failed somehow, right? That can be the differentiator, in fact. If you think about the person on the other side who's screening 100 resumes for two or three roles, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to put this person into the first round interview bucket, right? Ask them about why they did that, what happened, because it stands out, right? It says something about appetite to go try something, proactiveness, the ability to go and be a leader, right? And it also speaks to resilience, right, in the face of failure and being able to pick yourself back up again. So that's just my personal point of view. I always gave the folks that had tried their hand at being an entrepreneur a shot, and they typically turned out to be the best hires as well.
Mhm. So based on everything we've talked about, it seems like there's
Mhm.
absolutely no reason why someone who wants to start a business shouldn't start a business.
I can think of
Especially,
one. I can think of one. I
okay, let's
uh,
hear it.
I do want to. I feel compelled to say this, which is, um, it's not a career path for everyone.
Hmm.
And you got to go into it with passion and an idea and a certain level of stubbornness to make it happen. And there are just some folks, David, that aren't wired that way. They really don't like the ambiguity or uncertainty, or they don't like to sell,
Hmm.
right? They don't like rejection. And so if like the idea of being rejected uh makes you curl up into a ball in the fetal position and cry at night, then being an entrepreneur is probably not going to be for you,
Hmm. Yeah.
because it's not, people are not going to give you a hug every day. And so,
Hmm.
I can't say that's for you or not, right? And to anybody listening to this, you need to decide for yourself how mentally ready you are for the career. But if you have that conversation and you say to yourself, "Yeah, I can do this," then go for it, right?
Hmm.
If nothing, if you have the conversation and it's like, "Oh, it sounds awful," then
Yeah.
don't go for it, right? I'm not telling you you have to go for it. Just do what you feel is in your heart and what your passion is. But if you feel that way, my point in all of this, if you have the conversation and you know within yourself you could do it, and the only thing holding you back at that point is fear of failure, then do it anyway. Failure
Hmm.
shouldn't be the thing that stops you, right? Whether or not you're passionate about it is what you should really be thinking about.
100%. And let's just say, imagine an individual who doesn't need the hugs every day. They know they want to be an entrepreneur and they're ready for the journey. Um,
Mhm.
and maybe we could talk about what you're thinking for the Spears Institute, and a lot of the resources you would be looking to provide to these students. Without saying anything, maybe confidential to what you guys are doing now, I was just wondering, what are some resources that you think you maybe want to provide at the Spears Institute to SMU students or to other students, um, or other, we'll say resources that other schools should be providing to their students to help them out? I guess, what are some key areas that you think would help turn, we'll say, students into better entrepreneurs and help them along their journey? So is it, networking, through mentorship? What are some key areas that you guys are maybe looking into?
So for the Spears Institute specifically, we're in a really fortunate position as a new institute that we can really take stock of what works at SMU and what works at great campuses around the country and build that. And the vision is to be um, that bridge for students to inspire them to be entrepreneurs and then to reduce the barriers for them to go out and to do it. And so there's a number of different ways that we can do that, from educational programming to funding, but we're really thinking about it in terms of practical experience, mentorship, connections to corporate, to services, um, funding, where we have the ability, both in terms of competitions and also in terms of investments, and then lastly, getting access to talent, to build out teams. And so, we have a really exciting slate of things that we're going to launch this year, all in that space, culminating in an accelerator program, which would offer all of those things to students who want to spend their summers working on a business idea, and go from something which is an idea on a page, maybe you participated in something like Big Ideas, to actually do some of the things that we're talking about. Build a product, go out and test it, find a team, go engage with angel investors and get that feedback so that you can maybe go back to school, right, for your next year, or maybe you're at the point of graduating and this can be the thing that you really can work on, right, and turn it into a viable option, and make that be your career. And so, I'm really excited about that. It's a huge honor to be able to lead that opportunity. And I think it's very complementary to what we have at SMU in terms of academic programming in the classroom, as well as the other services and support that exists, with employment services and other competitions. And we're sort of like the honors program, so to speak, for entrepreneurship on campus.
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, the cameras were rolling. I definitely love the vision. I support it. And so what would you say to maybe someone like me who is going to their senior year, or maybe someone
Mhm.
who's recently graduated, is an alumni or alumnus of SMU? Um, are there a lot of resources extending to those sorts of entrepreneurs who've already graduated? And if so, like, what are some resources that people who might have already graduated from SMU or will be graduating soon should look for, maybe through the Spears Institute or just other things through SMU?
Yeah, you bet. So, first and foremost, the accelerator program is open to SMU students and alumni. And so when that launches, we would very much welcome recently graduated students to be a part of that. Um, and then some of the other things that I've mentioned, we hope to build out a community centered around SMU, both in terms of folks that are looking for mentors, looking for resources, looking for services, and folks that are willing to offer them. And we all play many roles in life. I'm a student. I'm a father. I'm a mentor. Sometimes I'm a mentee. And we can all be the same, right? I think some of the best mentors are the ones that know what it was like to be a freshman, coming in and having entrepreneurial ideas, because it's still very very much in your mind. And so I just hope that folks, as we start building this, we just want to make a big tent and everyone's invited. There'll be some really cool, fun events on campus and off campus to attend. We've got some things where there'll be some very, very exciting speakers. So I would say, sign up. You want to be a mentor, you want to sign up to some of the services in the program, give and you'll get. And if you're interested in the accelerator, then very much I'd love to see an application.
Hmm. And how long is this accelerator program? Is there like a time
Mhm.
length, time duration to it, or how does that work in terms of the structure?
Right now, we're looking at it as a 10 to 12 week program,
Mhm.
subject to a little bit of finalization of a curricula starting after commencement.
Okay. Okay. And on the idea of mentorship, so how
Mhm.
important is that? I know we talked about it in another call, but how important is mentorship for early entrepreneurs and especially people who are trying to start a business in college? And what role do you think that that definitely plays on the level of success a lot of these entrepreneurs can have?
It's um, it's super important, but I would give one caveat.
Mhm.
Not everyone is a great mentor, and so it's a mysterious thing, David. If you can find the right mentors to coach you and guide you, it's almost a superpower, because it's like you get to stand on the shoulders of giants and you get all of their years of cumulative learning. You know how we talked about 10, 20 years, and then they come to you and then they compress 20 years in bite-sized packages and then it contributes to you. Um, it's very hard to do anything in this world without folks that can help steer you with a gentle hand away from making mistakes, right? Said another way, right? Like your own personal mistakes are super costly,
Mhm.
right? But if you can learn from someone else's mistakes and avoid them, that's a high ROI, right?
Yeah.
The key in that is finding someone that you can connect with and that has something that it's worth listening to. And that's the real art to it. I mean, I know in your business, we talked about this, you might have 1,000 people who want to be mentors and only like 100 of them are actively engaged and only 20
Mhm.
to 30 of them are actually good mentors.
Yeah.
They've got to have wisdom, they've got to have credible experience, they've got to want to give the time, there's got to be a personal connection as well as a professional one. They've got to have patience, and it's a pretty unique skill set. But trust me, everyone, I mean, they're out there, and I think that's um, really what Spears can bring actually to the community, because we can put the work in to go find those people and bring them to campus and then connect them with entrepreneurs that need that, and almost play a bit of a matching role there. It's very hard to find them on your own. And so, I hope we have a good slate already. I hope that we can build on that and build a community around it.
Mhm. Yeah, and do you think you're going to build a sort of in-person space for the Spears Institute?
We will over time. There's you may know that SMU Cox is opening a lovely new building.
Hmm.
And so we'll have space there, and we have access to amazing space in that building. And so I think year one, right? Because we're a startup.
Hmm.
We'll see, how many folks sign up to be a part of what we're doing. And if it's 100 people coming every other week, then there's a strong case to get our own space. I think it will be, but it takes a bit to prove that to justify breaking ground on another space. And so we won't want for spaces to work and to have nice events. Um, the translation of that into a permanent space, that's probably year two or year three. But it'll come, David. Don't worry. I have big plans.
I look forward to it. And so I'm definitely gonna try to do my part now because I would love to see an in-person building. I think that'd be super cool. I just imagine like the Heige Career Center, how you walk in, you have, instant help to professionals to build your resume and whatnot. If they had something similar to that for entrepreneurship, maybe building business plans, maybe doing other things, I think that that could be a cool resource. So I definitely look forward to that. I'll try to do my part. And yeah, is there any other key things that I might have left out that you'd want to give advice to young entrepreneurs, particularly college students at SMU or other universities who are looking to start businesses? I want to make sure I didn't leave anything important out.
Yeah, I would say one other thing, which is let's say this the right way. Uh, Go find the thing that you're passionate about. There's a lot of, I think, folks that get um, excited by someone else's dream, and then they convince themselves that that's their passion. Um, and it's a hard way to get into it, because you'll find one day you were you thought you were an entrepreneur, but it turns out you were working for someone else, right? You were working for peer pressure, or you were working for popularity, or you were working for your investors. Um, it's hard to sort of to get out of that. I understand, but like, don't be afraid to be the weird person that's into something that no one else cares about.
Yeah.
Make that your thing, because 10 years from now, all of those things that you were worried about are just like not going to matter, right? And what's going to matter is you found the thing that you were really passionate about down here, and that's what you went after, and then you're the expert. That's what people are going to think is super cool 10 years from now, whether or not you were building an AI startup. I'm picking on AI, but pick any
Yeah.
flavor of them. That's not going to matter. And I think if you need someone to sort of give some tough love and sort of call out that you're just doing something, then I'm always here. Give me a call.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I think this was a great episode. I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else at SMU and other colleges will as well. So I really appreciate you taking the time on a late day like this. So I appreciate it.
No problem at all. It was fun. Happy to chat anytime, David.